Welcome back to Ronnie's Roughhousing Reviews. Today I've got a classic one movie, one album format. First up on the docket is the newest Danny Boyle epic, 28 Years Later.
There are many kinds of death.
Now, if you've listened to the special episode that only aired on my Instagram page, you'll remember that I already talked about 28 Days Later, and I absolutely loved it, one of my favorite horror movies. Now, this newest follow-up to that isn't quite as good, but it was still damn good.
28 Years Later, rated R.
I guess the first thing I want to mention is that this movie is seemingly a part 1. The film ends on a cliffhanger, which wasn't in any of the marketing or anything. Now, that's been a huge trend with directors not being able to condense their ideas into one movie. Dune Part 1, Part 2, Wicked is a Part 1 to a duology. One of the biggest examples was many people being thrown off by the fact that the latest Spider-Verse entry was a Part 2 of 3, and now this one. I do honestly enjoy all those examples to varying degrees, but they still all suffer slightly by the fact that, inherently, the endings are a bit unsatisfying and reliant on how good the next movie will be. Out of those examples, the only one that has concluded in their Part 2 is Dune, and it was great, so I could only hope that the other 3 will do the same. Now, I was so entertained and hooked that I had no idea that it was even close to ending when it did, because it flew by for me. But that's still one real issue I could point to, is that if the next movie in the 28 series isn't great, it'll leave a damper on this one. But that's all ifs, ands, and buts. What was actually observable in this film? First of all, the cinematography was incredible. They had a mountain to live up to, with the original 28 having some of the greatest visuals of all time, and they lived up to the mantle quite well. The opening scenes had several strange glass-shattered split point-of-view camera shots, and the unique technique with the fuzzy focus and tilted angles continued throughout, as if the opening virus breakout shattered the world of this town to the point that it affects how they see the world. At least that's how I interpreted it on the first viewing. It was helped greatly by the editing, just like in the original. The fast-paced DJ-style edits combined with creative choices like how the camera froze and shifted as they hit the zombie targets was so impressive. Same with the blood-red nighttime shots of blurry images of zombies eating up dead animals and body parts. The visuals weren't quite as insane and memorable as the original, but they were unique and perfect for a modern reimagining of the 28 Days style. The music also went along with that. The guttural guitar riffs and booming drums near the end hit just as hard as the stressful shaking music during the boots scene, which hit just as hard as the spastic beats during certain fight scenes. The sound design was also pretty great. The gruesome moments of the big alpha zombies ripping out spines were so effective due in no small part to the brutal sound design. The little boy and the whole supporting cast were incredible, although I feel like I can't fully judge the story yet because none of the themes and ideas have come full circle, which again, kind of isn't great. I wish I had more of a takeaway in terms of where this could lead and what I could take from this film alone, especially since the original's message was so clear and smart to me. I'm excited for what's next, and I'm loving the cast of characters, and from what we have here, the execution was incredible. But I'm still left a teeny bit empty after this movie. Still loved it, but there's a huge weight on the next movie's shoulders, and I hope it delivers. So I'm giving 28 Years Later an 8 out of 10.
June 20th, a new fear is born.
Put it down.
28 years later.
Next up is an album that came out 5 years ago at the start of the pandemic, but I only just discovered it very recently, and that album is Little Dominique's Nosebleed by the Koreatown Oddity. It's an underground hip-hop concept album about the Koreatown Oddity, or K-Town's childhood for the most part, and the people, environment, and events that changed his life forever. The performance on this album is incredible. K-Town's writing style was very intriguing. He clearly is very well versed at writing satisfying and complex rhyme schemes and coming up with sick wordplay, but he also doesn't shackle himself to such strict hip-hop writing constraints, and instead plays around with his verses in a non-traditional way, not always rhyming everything perfectly, and making the whole album sound more like a journal entry, which I'm sure was very intentional. The storytelling on this album was incredibly vivid and cinematic at times, especially with the small intermissions with his parents and voiceovers of him and his friends hanging out, to make you feel like you've literally been transported back in time to witness his childhood. The scenes with his mom were all incredible, and the voice actress killed it and brought something really memorable and special to the table, and I love how the album ends with her to make the experience feel more cohesive.
Is he gonna be okay? Is his nose broken?
I also just love the small anecdotes like K-Town talking about how he used to call Neapolitan ice cream Napoleon because he didn't know how to pronounce it, or the moments where he geeks out about video games and playing Ninja Turtles. Just small details like that paint a more vivid picture.
Foot Clan stepped up, we made them regret it. Leave them running with their tails tucked back to the shredder. The game f***ed up, man. We gotta reset it. The game's f***ed up. We gotta reset this shit.
This style was especially effective on a track like Ginka Biloba, with the childhood memories spewed out in a very diary entry type way. Some other incredible moments of writing on this album were A B-Word Once Told Me and Attention Challenge, both hyper-focusing on very specific ideas. A B-Word Once Told Me is a story song about a woman who K-Town philosophically disagrees with and spins that conversation into some thought-provoking verses. An Attention Challenge is a perfect example of why this will always be a nerdy underground gem, because songs with such weird sounds and uncomfortable ideas could never really go mainstream. The verses from both K-Town and Skylar Duff are incredible. The eerie, complex production with these kind of disturbing cat meow samples and switch up at the end to an infomercial about this product called Black Google are all aspects that make this song and the whole album so unique.
Get a rape case for attention. Get tats on your face for attention.
Yes, Black Google. We gave a few people in the community our new product and let them try it out. Call this number now to try it for yourself.
On the topic of the production, it's time to really dive into that. Really the most impressive part was the production for me. I was so in awe of K-Town's ability to puzzle together samples and clips to create such a textured and layered soundscape akin to the genius of something like Since I Left You by the Avalanches. I assume the heavy use of samples is also what caused 2 of the songs in the album to be off Spotify, which is so sad because they're some of the sickest tracks on the project. I recommend either listening to this album on YouTube, I'm pretty sure both songs are still on Apple Music, I don't know why they aren't on Spotify, or downloading the 2 songs into your local files library on Spotify and putting them in the correct order on a playlist of the album. Or just buy the damn record if you have the money. It's worth it, I promise. Koreatown Oddity, the song named after the artist and one of the missing tracks, has one of the most textured and fascinating sounds. The song has this spooky, eerie vibe with bouncy, odd-sounding bass hits. It's a sound that I could only describe by saying it reminds me of Killer Clowns from Outer Space. It's just so weird and layered. I can't skim past my Killer Clowns comparison without mentioning the very explicit, circusy, childish sound of Kimchi.
Laughter through madness!
Lots of the songs have a similar special cosmic horror vibe, like the graveyard type beat on Darkness Interlude or the spooky circus sound on No Llores.
Well, now's the time to do something constructive.
There's also a running theme of songs having beat switches and entire sonic shifts to keep the album feeling sporadic and chaotic in just the right way. A Bleep Once Told Me, which I mentioned earlier, has actually 2 beat switches and they're both so perfect, as well as on Little Dominique's Nosebleed Part 1, which is the song that lays down the story of the album, switching from a boom-bap soul beat to an ominous organ beat with a very dark piano melody and smoky percussion.
Little Dominique in the car with his moms, on the way to the sitter in a white Nissan. No health insurance and that's still what I need. You don't know nothing about Little Dominique's nosebleed.
It signifies the life-altering moment described on the song, when K-Town gets in an intense car crash, leading to him hitting his head on the windshield and developing a tragic nose condition, leading to debilitating chronic nosebleeds. As someone who's had nosebleeds pretty often my whole life, the description of his condition really disturbed me, especially when paired with the dark beat. I've been listening to Boards of Canada a lot lately, particularly their album Geo Gotti, but on many listens I skip the track Gyroscope. Not because I don't like it, it's actually one of the best on the albums, but the movie Sinister has stained that song to remind me of such horrific scenes. In the same way that Gyroscope is sometimes too much for me to handle, I sometimes skip Little Dominique's Nosebleed Part 1, because it's too vivid and effective for me. I also listened to Ethel Cain's masterpiece Preacher's Daughter very recently, and I have barely revisited it much since, even though I loved it, because it's too dark. And that's really powerful if you can create music that compelled such a reaction in someone. Anyways, Chase the Spirit is another track with an intense and demonic piano melody over the dusty drum hits. But it goes even further with the very off-kilter and insane ending that takes a hard left turn into dark spirituality and eerie choir sounds.
Finna put my fucking phone down, pick up some literature. But hold up right quick, I got this tweet I gotta finish first.
The song that goes furthest into an experimental, unconventional sound just might be Little Dominique's Nosebleed Part 2, with a strange jazzy sample to exacerbate the second song that describes a separate incident of a life-altering car crash.
No health insurance and that's still what I need. You don't know nothing about Little Dominique's Nosebleed.
The production on this track really reminds me of Atrocity Exhibition, another masterclass in experimental hip-hop. I also love the more emotional melodic sounds of tracks like The World's Smallest Violin and Weed in LA, the latter having great political lyrics on the chorus, which ties into an ongoing social commentary in the lyrics between the childhood stories. I mentioned Since I Left You by the Avalanches earlier, and I can't skim past that comparison without talking about Laugh of Luxury, the second last song before the hilarious skit outro. Laugh of Luxury demonstrates the genius of high-level sampling. The late 90s coastal sound of the fluttery beat mixed with the beautiful vocals from this female singer, mixed with what sounds to me like an old Indian vocal recording, mixed with nature sounds of beach waves and seagulls, tied all together by the uplifting poetry to close the track out.
With such realization, he will become the master of his possessions, but never a slave.
It's so complex and mind-blowing to me to be able to piece all that together. I admire that quality so much, and it's just one piece of what makes this album so incredible. And you could only really experience that by listening to the album. So please go listen to it, and make sure the copy of this album has the third and fourth tracks. My favorites on this album were Little Dominique's Nosebleed Part 1, Lap of Luxury, and Koreatown Oddity, and I would give this album a 9 out of 10.
Little Dominique's Nosebleed.
Little Dominique's Nosebleed.
Little Dominique's Nosebleed. Little Dominique's Nosebleed.
That's all I have for you this week. Check out Review Ronny on Instagram for more info on the show, and before I let you listeners go, it's time for Ronny's Joke of the Week. What would you call 28 years later if it was about a deadly hangover? 28 beers later. See you next time on Ronny's Ruptured Reviews.
Hey, Ronny. Ronny?
Good reviews?
Fabulous reviews.
This is Ronny. Make it good.
Suppose Ronny could have been a
reviewer.
It's Ronny, all right.
Ronny?
Reviews.
Fabulous reviews.
And this is the best review we got.